Welcome to the Donna Seebow Show. Donna is an international mental practitioner, psychic, award-winning author, counselor, speaker, teacher, and radio television talk show personality. She brings to the airwaves talented people from around the world who share their insights and experiences with you, the listening audience. Now, let's join Donna.
Hello, I'm so delighted you're joining me this evening. We're going to be talking with a woman who is very committed to bringing forth the understanding of how we can personally empower ourselves. When you look at what's going on in the world today, you may feel that, everything is just absolutely such a mucky mess. Are we ever going to be able to get out of it? And we get so engaged with our biases and what often is given to us via media and so many other sources of information via the internet, etc., that really are not giving us what we need to know so that we can ask, number one, for the facts, but also be aware that we have more power as an individual than we could even imagine. I want to welcome to the show Reverend Marilyn Redmond, and she has quite a background here, but I will say that she has come out with this book, A Spark of Truth. And her background and her life story, I think, is extremely interesting because it was a journey for her to learn how to overcome a lot of what would be considered by obstacles, big obstacles, by any one of us hearing her story. And I think it's going to make you aware of the fact that life is a wonderful gift. But more than that, you are in charge of really how you can make that life turn out in a positive way, believe it or not. Dr. Marilyn Redmond, welcome to the show.
I'm so glad to be here, Donna. Thank you for having me on your show. This is such a special day.
Well, you know what, Marilyn? I really feel that, and going through your book, A Spark of Truth, I so appreciated your integrity about your own personal story. It's not easy to sit down and to, you might say, bare the soul of, what you go through. And there are so many of us that will say, I don't want anybody to know about my dirty laundry. But you just put it right out there. And obviously, that's because you learned how to use the right kind of detergent, mental detergent, to scrub up what would have been considered a sense of shame or whatever other descriptive adjective we might want to put to whatever it is we go through. And you said, thank you, I'm hanging it out to dry, and it's going to be sparkling white and clean, and I don't give a hoot what anybody else thinks. Congratulations. Not many people do that.
Well, thank you for the accolade. That's very kind of you.
When you started on your journey, it was not because your life was perfect. It was far from it. But you really got hit by, I would say, not just 10 by 4s by the universe. You got hit with 20 by 20s. And
it's been overwhelming at times, believe me.
Oh, I can imagine. And having been through a few episodes like that myself, I go, Madam, you really did a good job here. Give us a little bit of background about what you went through and what it took to finally make you say, this isn't going to work anymore.
Well, I have described it in some of my other books besides The Spark of Truth. My story starts way back when I was a child. I was raised in domestic violence. My parents were mentally ill, and my father was an alcoholic, and my stepdad and mother were mentally ill. I never knew what reality was. I didn't know what love was, even though I was in Sunday school and church for 50 years. I was shut down emotionally because of all the abuse I went through in that childhood. And then when I married like attracts like. I didn't know I thought I was going to create a happy family that was going to get along and everybody was going to have a good time. And I married what I was used to, so I just extended all the abusive things from the past and discovered I'd married just exactly what I came from, which is alcoholism, mental illness. He was a psychopath and a sex addict, and I'd been sexually abused earlier, so that attracted that situation. And he was a rageaholic, and my stepdad was a rageaholic. So I definitely had put myself in the same predicament and didn't even know it in those days. And it wasn't until life got so severe, he was threatening to kill me. And several times. I've almost died 13 times. And in this particular situation, after 30 years of marriage of all this domestic violence and abuse, I was in a car ride coming home from Canada. We had been on vacation, and he got real lividly upset that night before we left. And so he was so upset we ended up leaving in the middle of the night, driving home, and he was going to kill us in the car. And so I had always read prayers from the hymnal at church. I never knew that you could make up your own prayers in those days. And all of a sudden, spontaneously, I called inside nice and loudly, God, please help me. I really don't want to die. We'd had 3 situations where I thought for sure we were goners in the car ride. And fortunately, within minutes, he was off the road, passed out over the wheel. And one thing led to another. I'll make a long story short. I ended up coming home. My son had to come and get me because I asked for the police to take me out of the car. I'd left a note at a coffee shop for help. And so I came home and had a restraining order, divorce papers ready. But I couldn't go through with the divorce for 3 tries because I was so codependent. And I couldn't understand but I didn't realize I was also emotionally 3 years old, and I never grew up from seeing my real dad beat my mother when I was 3 years old, and I went into a turtle shell to protect myself emotionally. So I'm operating as a 3-year-old during this situation, and wondering how I'm going to get out of this marriage. And it was a real difficult time, and it took tons of courage to finally go through with the divorce, be on my own. I went to a psychiatrist for help because of the anxiety, and he gave me Valium. Now, in the 70s, there was a saying that when women went for help, they had a Valium deficiency, which, of course, I didn't have a Valium deficiency, and I got addicted to it. So because of the addiction to Valium, and I was, in those days, a social drinker, but I found out at treatment that 1 pill and 1 drink is 6 times the effect chemically in your system. So I got addicted. And in treatment, they gave me a spiritual program to follow, which is called the 12 Steps. And they had us meditating every morning, which in my church had preached against meditation. So that was a very big step. I never knew about faith and taking a leap of faith, but to learn to meditate was a huge leap of faith. However, it has been the best solution to all my problems, because today, through my meditations, I can connect with the answers that work for me from my heart. Instead of living off the fear in my head and releasing all of that, let go of it, replace it with the love of the universe that created me, I can now live in a life where I am thoroughly loved and appreciate it, can take it in, and have a reality in my life today. Love is reality, and I didn't live in reality until I found meditation and a higher power that loved me and gave me that courage inside and gave me that power back to myself instead of giving it to somebody else. What I found out is when you look outside for advice and authority or someone telling you how you should do it, you're actually giving them the power over you. And today I don't look for for advice from others. I listen to my heart, and in my heart is a piece of God, P-I-E-C-E. My soul is a piece of God, and I have the power. I just didn't know it.
Mm-hmm. This is something that I know I had to learn about, and it is getting rid of the indoctrinations of experience like you went through. And it wasn't a simple journey. It was years of your life, and yet you're a very, very educated woman. You have, even in school as a young person, you were a valedictorian of your class. I mean, here you are going through all of these experiences, and someone listening to this might say, oh, I can relate to it, but life is not fair. This is not fair. This shouldn't be happening to me. And playing out a role of victim, and I'm not saying this to criticize people, and because it is something that's very human. We all do it in one form or one type or another. And I really think that to wake up, to really be aware of ourselves, that does take courage. Because so often our environments that we're in want us to stay right in the box that it's created for us. And for us to step out of that box, we have to be willing to kick the door down. You were willing to kick the door down, weren't you?
Well, it was a matter of life or death in my case, because when I was in treatment, they told me I was dying. And because the combination of the medication with alcohol was killing me, and I was in the last stages of alcoholism, and to pick up a drink or to take any mind or mood altering medications, I would, I would die. So it was a matter of a decision out of, do I want to live or do I want to die? And I really know today I came to help people learn that they can overcome these situations too, and I had to go through them and come out on the other side to have the wisdom and experience. And so in my counseling and in my writing, and when I do a lot of pro bono work and a lot of volunteer work, and when I'm helping people, and it's the sharing of your experience that's the healing. So when somebody goes for counseling, if the person that's doing the counseling has had the experience, you will get results. If somebody is just still in their head trip, it's just words. Mm-hmm. There's something about sharing from the heart and sharing the truth about a situation that's very healing. And the energy and the courage inside grows, and you feel better about yourself. You feel like you can do it where before you didn't feel like you had the ability to do it. Today, I love being able to help people because it helps me.
Yes, and you did I'll call it an exercise. You called it, I believe, a ritual in your book. You had so much anger that was inside of you, and you had been married to someone that was a rageaholic, to put it bluntly, and there are many people that go through that. But you were able, with the use of balloons, to release that anger. Tell us what you did.
Well, over the years, I've gotten a little smarter, let's put it that way. I found out that when people, there's only two emotions, well, there's energy, positive and negative. And if people have had a really difficult life and experience and they're in fear, they're very angry. My ex-husband had a terribly abusive childhood. He told me what it was one time. And I couldn't, he was full of anger. Well, I didn't even know I was full of anger because of my abuse. It was so, I shut it off. And the pills, the medications, I found out, stop your feelings just like alcohol does. So what I found out is that when you get sober or get clean from any toxic substances, you can start having feelings. And what I realized is that when I'm angry, it's because somebody wasn't doing what I wanted. Things didn't go my way. Things didn't happen the way I thought they should. And so my anger was from my disappointments. And today I know everything went the way exactly it was supposed to go for my growing and learning. And what I learned about my husband is his anger was from his abusive childhood, and it was his anger, not mine. And everybody comes into this planet wounded in some way. And so when we come from fear, we stay in that woundedness and we express it as anger. So I I detached, and it's his anger today. And what happened in the past is history, so I don't have to hang on to it. I don't have to keep carrying his anger or my anger today. I can live in the present. So instead of having one foot in the past and one foot in the work, my mother taught me worry very well because she went through the Great Depression. And so I was never living in the moment. And if I'm living in the moment, it's a gift, and it's called the present. And when I'm in that presence of my higher power, my Creator, there's peace and love and comfort, and my needs are met. Life is okay right now. All things are going well. Life is good. And so I give up the anger. I let it go because it's history, and it doesn't have to influence me anymore.
With the balloons, you did something that I thought was very significant. Anyone and everything or everyone that you would find yourself getting angry about, you would write their name on the balloon and then release it.
Well, I was taught to do that. I can't remember when, but I happen to fortunately live near a dollar store, and of course they're not dollar stores now, and could go up to the store, get myself some balloons with helium, and I'd write the name of the person on the balloon and let it go. So not only did I mentally let it go because I don't have to stay in the past anymore, but it was a symbolic release of the emotions to that attachment in that person that was causing trouble for me. So I just released the balloon and let it fly away into the ethers until I couldn't see it anymore, and I felt free. It was a very freeing act.
Also in your book, and you've got so many different subjects that you cover in this book, A Spark of Truth, and in our time together, we obviously are going to be able to discuss all of them. But one of the aspects you bring out, which I think is very, very significant, and you related this also with children, and that is nutrition, and how important it is to be aware that we have to pay attention to that aspect for ourselves. And I am very pleased in this time frame, more and more people are speaking and addressing this factor, no matter what a person's age might be. And I think that this is very, very significant, and it went a long way to helping you actually cope as you were detoxifying yourself. Am I correct?
Yes, our nutrition, I hate to say this, but is definitely been rearranged not to be in nutritional benefit to our bodies. The GMO foods are genetically manufactured to release any nutritional value. So I very purposely at the store make sure I try to buy organic and non-GMO, because if the seed has been removed from the God source in that seed that would make it grow into a nutritional item for our benefit in eating. So not only is the GMO food causing us to not have the nutritional value, so we can, pardon me just a minute, I need to clear my throat. The GMO stops the nutritional value so we can think rationally. And also in my book I talk about natural flavors and artificial flavors. You can hardly buy an item on the shelf today that doesn't have natural or artificial flavors. Sadly, the FDA has allowed manufacturers to add elements into our food, and they don't have to disclaim what it is. And often it's like adding like in Kentucky Fried Chicken, the MSG is addictive. So the elements they're adding to our foods are bringing on weight for people in one way. They're also causing people to, because it tastes so good, I want more. So then you become compulsive in your eating, and whatever items that they've added it to that adds that artificial chemical to your system, and you're starting to eat more, and so it gets out of control, and that's called addiction. So the artificial and they call it natural, but they are not natural. They're made in a chemistry lab to not. It doesn't benefit your health. Let's put it that way. in the front part of the book, part 1, I talk about how this planet is depopulation. And as the population is depleting in the various ways I explain in the book of how they're depleting the population, our food is just one. In other books, I've talked about how the air is being polluted by chemtrails and all the different ways that they're trying to, in medicine, the toxic medicines that we have and so forth. There's the behind the agenda is to depopulate the population for a smaller population to control. And I explain that quite a bit more in the first part of the book of how that came about and the history of it.
When you were putting this book together, you really wanted people to be able to look at a number of different aspects, a number of facts, so that they could begin to question or ask questions, to be curious, to be thinking about themselves. And this, I feel, is something that in society, and this could be at any part of the world, we all have those paradigms that are introduced to us in our indoctrinations of one kind or another. And to be able to recognize ourselves as individuals and realize we're also part of a massive collective, if you will, called human beings, and that we do have a significant role in life, and we do have a significant purpose in life. We may not have yet discovered it, but just like with you, you find through your writing and through the disciplines that you learned in getting advanced education, how important it is to be a critical thinker, to ask questions. This is something that I feel took me a long time, because it was exactly the opposite of what I was taught. It was okay to ask questions and not to be intimidated when people would say, well, I think what you're asking is stupid, or, by the remarks that they would retort with. It's fascinating how we have to learn how to be able to be comfortable in our own skin. And as we have already shared, it took you quite a few years to be able to recognize that you can be totally at peace within yourself and have a constructive conversation with someone and really not care whether they agree with you or disagree with you.
Well, it's taken a lot of years in understanding to grow into that, be able to handle what you just said. One of the chapters is about education, and I'm a retired teacher. And I've just very sad about how education has really changed into making rubber stamps of students that they all think in that box that you talked about. And so people aren't supposed to question authority. They're not supposed to question experts. But when I taught school, there were just very few tests of children to see what their individual progress was. Nowadays, the children have tests every year to make sure they have learned the dogma or the propaganda, to make sure that they are nice, good little followers, nice, good little soldiers, you might say. And like you said, not to think for themselves. And so my religion did the same thing to me. You think from the church dogma rather than from your heart. And in finding meditation, I've learned to move out of my head for my answers or to other people and move into my heart where the answers for me are there, for my life path, not what somebody tells me I have to. A lot of people, there were actually 5 multimillionaires I saw this article on the internet years back, who never graduated from high school but became multimillionaires. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to go through the routine of what the culture tells us to have a successful life. It comes from within, and it manifests into your life. When you're out of your head, that actually stops your life. So when you're coming from your heart and the love within, it blossoms, it blooms, and opportunities show up. And when life gets difficult, it's just another opportunity to choose. This is a planet of choice, and we can choose to resist the new lesson in our life, to pick a loving resolution for the situation, or we can stay in fear and anger and never grow. So as we are learning to think for ourselves, we'll say, I had a stroke a year and a half ago, and in the ambulance heading for Tacoma General Hospital, I cried out inside of my head, God, what's the lesson in this one? And we think for ourselves, and we don't have to buy into what we've been told.
Mm-hmm. I think that is extraordinarily important. And it does take time for us to really understand the law of attraction, which is what you discuss in your book. And the section on education, I think, is very, very important because our children need to know that the world that they will create for themselves, they don't create my world, they're going to create their world. When
right. It's all for the benefit of the elite or the rich, whatever title you want to give them.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, it takes courage, and it always has taken courage throughout history, to be able to stand in one's own space and say, I am who I am, and I love and respect myself. That's very powerful. That is extraordinarily powerful. And when that happens, other people want to know how you do it, and it's really not anything super colossal complicated, but it is that understanding you can respect yourself, you can appreciate the lessons that you've gone through, take the gold nugget out of the lesson, and get rid of the garbage.
Well, I was so codependent. I was still so dependent on my parents because, they couldn't raise me from their not being raised themselves. And so I had no clue of how to live life. And that continued with me throughout life. But I found out as I got into recovery, there isn't anything that I can do on my own. I need God. I need a higher power. I need that loving energy that gives me the courage and the faith. And I say, God, I need more faith for this one. Here we go again. And each time we grow into being more mature, if we stay in the fear, I'm finding out, that's like a little child in the dark bedroom at night, and he's scared, and he says, Mommy, there's a boogeyman in my room. And Mommy comes and turns on the light and shows him there's no boogeyman. And that's what we're doing with our life. We call on the light of our Creator to turn on the light. There's no boogeyman. There's no fear. We can go ahead and just see that everything is okay. And today I see through the eyes of love. I don't see through the eyes of fear, but there's no boogeyman.
Mm-hmm. And that is a huge accomplishment. That really is a huge accomplishment. And Marilyn, that's one of the gifts that you want people to get from this book. And there's many other gifts that you give in the awareness and the knowledge and research that you have in your book, A Spark of Truth. You also have a blog, and you've got how many other publications? You've got ebooks, and what else have you got?
Well, I have a total of, including A Spark of Truth, I have 11 books, and some of them are ebooks, and they're all on Amazon. And I write 2 columns a month. One is an international column for Sussex newspaper. Every month I put out a column, have for several years. And I also have a local newspaper I write for and have a column. My blog with my books is Marilyn Redmond Books.blogspot.com. I have 190 videos on YouTube if people want to check that out. And my books, of course, are at Amazon, and my website is angelicusgifts.com. And so I try to keep everything up to date. So my writing is usually currently continually changing with new understandings that I come into. So it's not the same old story. It's the current things that I've just recently learned and grown from. So hopefully the readers will grow with me.
Well, I think your book, A Spark of Truth, is just so informative and has so much information in detail. And again, you go into more depth relative to your own personal story and the aspects that you had to break through relative to barriers, etc. So A Spark of Truth, and it's Marilyn Redmond. Actually, they show Reverend Marilyn L. Redmond, and the website is angelicasgifts.com, and that's ANGELICASGIFTS.com. Marilyn, it's been a delight having you as a guest. Thank you so much for being with me.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share, that people can find a new way to life that is going to give them happy, joyous, and a peaceful way of life that they deserve.
My pleasure.